Chris, thank you very much for taking your time today. Last time we spoke was on our podcast, and you said nothing good is coming out of this pandemic except maybe some changes to Swiss hockey.
Well, first of all, at the moment, I'm certainly speaking as an independent. I feel having this opportunity to come and speak to you and the questions, I feel I can offer an independent opinion. My last time I spoke to you, certainly there's nothing good that comes out of a pandemic, but the one thing that every club realized was exactly how fragile their business model is. It's an extraordinary circumstance that hopefully only happens once in our lifetime to see what happened with the COVID. And the business model of sports in Switzerland has really suffered. And thank gosh, for the Confederation in stepping up and certainly being guardian angels to help these sports clubs survive. Otherwise, it could have been an avalanche of so many clubs that could have disappeared.
How can a sports company in the future can be successful at the same time as having revenue enough?
Well, first and foremost, it's a business. The minute there's the commerce of honoring employment contracts and sponsor contracts in exchange of money, it's no longer an amateur sport. It's a business. It's a big business. And where a lot of people sometimes in management miss the point is when they think it's a sport first, a business second. It's the number one priority of a manager, CEO, the board, to be sure they protect the business first and foremost, and then allow the sport to happen afterwards. You hope they both are successful in parallel, and the good companies are able to do that.
Yeah, well, what's happening right now is that the clubs are saying, hey, business first and then sports second. They're putting that for 22, 23, and they're saying like, hey, as a sponsor, for example, if I invest in you, or as a fan, I want you to be successful and to buy me the best import.
If the fans want these professional clubs to exist, these clubs realize that they're going to have to take care of their treasury and take care of their business to allow them to pay their rent and open the doors, 25 times a year for their fans at home. What you hear about is player salaries or salary cap or sport or financial fair play, but what you don't hear about is all the other cost controls they're endorsing throughout their entire business model, and they're looking to do things more cost effective in all areas of their business, not just on the sports salaries.
Yeah, let's talk about all those measurements. Let's start with the closed league. And they're going to close the league. Let's say sports-wise, you can't go down, you can't come up. How is that going to affect the costs of a company?
Well, first and foremost, say you own a bank, and say you're an important part of this bank in your local community. But maybe there's a rule that in the banking industry that the moment you have a year where maybe you don't have X amount of deposits or you don't have X amount of return or turnover, that you lose your banking license. Meanwhile, you employ 60 people with maybe another 120 volunteers for maybe match game or say special banking opportunities, and all of a sudden overnight your business is bankrupt and you lose your business. That's just banking. Maybe it's insurance. But sport cannot be looked at any other difference. Because if one year you have, say, injuries and you have some real, extraordinary struggles with your team, do you actually deserve to lose your entire business? And what happens is that for a sports team to lose its license to play, overnight, they've devastated a community. They've devastated so many lives and families with people who no longer have jobs. And that's why I say that the relegation, I've never been a fan of it. Maybe it's something that has been accepted here. But now, as it's graduating towards more of a business model, I just don't see where relegation belongs.
What do you say to people like people from Olten? Olten wants to go up since 20 years. And they lose their identification when they know they can't even go up at the end of the season. Of course they can at the green table, but not sports-wise.
From everything I hear from the powers within the National League, they're wide open to keeping the league open and accepting capable new members. And a capable new member, for me it's simple. You need infrastructure, to match people like you, so you can go and do your television in proper with the proper studios and equipment that most National League arenas provide. You need the infrastructure for the number of fans to be able to generate the number of VIPs and revenue. And then at the end, you need to be a good quality team sporting success on the ice.
They need to have a successful business model first, and we have to make a compromise and let go of the relegation. Is that the end? Is that what you're saying?
I've only missed the playoffs 2 times in my entire career in Geneva. And it's like touching a stove when you're a young child. You never forget how hot the stove is. So being in the relegation round, in the fear of losing your entire business and devastating an entire community, you never forget how hot that stove is. So that's my reason of success in Geneva. I never forgot how hot the stove was.
So that's one measurement, closing a league. Another instrument would be like financial fair play. What do you think about financial fair play as a measurement to get down the costs?
The good thing about financial fair play, it just levels the playing field. Again, in my 20 years in Switzerland, there's been Lugano won it once, and there's only been 3 other teams that have won it every year. What it does now is, one, it protects each team against each other and against themselves. It assures the team will have to stay within the guidelines of financial fair play. But now the MVP of every sports club is going to be the sports chef. The director sportif is now responsible to make sure that he guides everything along. It's the equivalent of trying to push 10 kilos of hamburger into a 5-pound bag. You want all this talent to arrive in whatever your sport budget is going to be, whatever's been given to you. Now the sports chef has got to be very, very smart. And what people don't understand is that now the focus on the junior development and within your system of bringing the young players through the system, because why? They're inexpensive to start with. As they join the National League team, or as they go through your partner team, once they arrive, they're not expensive until they prove their value or their worth.
For the financial fair play, don't you think that the big clubs are just going to ignore it and pay the luxury tax they need to pay if they ignore it?
Well, I think they're in the wrong country to do that. The reason why, out of all the European countries I know, going over the luxury tax or being applied a luxury tax, I don't think the Swiss sports culture will look at that as being cool. I think they're going to look at that as more or less people who are just unable to manage their company properly. Immediately teams like Rappi, Ambry, Langnau, all these teams, literally once this rule is, this reglement appears and is applied, you're just going to see these teams immediately be competitive.
Do you think that the communication is going to be better than right now? Because right now, sometimes we get the impression that the sport chiefs, they're not talking to each other, that they're going up with the salary even if the other team is already out of the bidding.
The management of your cap is going to be the asset. And if you have room within your cap or within your budget, then you may have room to relieve a team for maybe a future consideration. So this is going to open up a whole different spectrum of value to what the director sportif and sport chefs are going to be able to conduct, because one, you're just going to have to know way more about the lower leagues. You're going to have to spend a lot more time developing your young players. You're going to need a good partner team to be able to have an exchange of players, because you cannot carry 29, 30 players on a 23, 24-man roster. And I think you're going to see through crisis, I always say, emerges genius.
Let's say closing the league would be a compromise we can accept to be our businesses and clubs sustainable for the future. Let's say financial fair play is a good way to do it. But what's about the most emotional? Like, fans are getting crazy about the idea of having 10 imports here in Switzerland. What do you think about that?
For me, it's real simple. If you raise the number of imports without a sport cap, then I just don't believe that that's a way to conduct our business, because some teams with the budgets are just going to spend more money. But raising the imports and having a sport cap will keep that in balance. And I do not think that the good Swiss players are going to lose their chance to work. I just think that you're going to see teams are going to be more creative. Players are going to be a little more mobile on maybe with shorter contracts and playing various places. And I think teams are going to jump into this and then realize that these players are no better than the homegrown talent. But again, Imports with a cap, financial fair play, for me that makes sense.
If we do it all together, a lot of people are arguing, they're discussing and saying, hey, we're going to lose 72 workspaces, Swiss workspaces, because 6 imports more per team, 72. What do you say to that? Because it's going to, of course, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Swiss players, but they're going to lose their job.
I don't really see the good players with Swiss licenses. They're not going to disappear. You're going to see them probably, they will just move their status from being a Swiss license to being an import, but they're not going to lose their employment. So I don't think you're going to see a massive change from what really the reflection of a roster is going to be.
Can you understand that a Swiss guy, family father, has 2 kids, that he is worried that his 4th line position is going to be, that he's going to be bumped out because the second line guy is going to drop down to the 4th or 3rd line, so he's going to be bumped out. Do you understand that he's worried?
Yes, and I'd be remiss to sit here to say that there won't be any casualties from these application or the acceptance of these new regulations. We're talking possibly maybe 2-3 teams that might be affected by this. You're going to see most of the other teams they're hovering in that range right now. So you won't see many of these teams really have to make a drastic reduction to their budgets.
Once you get an import, you get it for 50, 60, 70, 80,000 a year. He's good. And what we've seen in Germany, for example, DEL, so every guy I talk to there, he's saying, hey, first year I've earned so much, but the second year I was changing to a bigger club and now you earned like a normal import the year before. So I think there's just going to be a bidding over the best import.
There will be, but then you're going to hit your limit on what your sport cap, because you will not be able to sign 10 imports at the level we're paying imports in the league at this moment. You're going to see a lot of internal management on just trying to push as much talent into what your cap is. And yes, you're going to see probably shorter contracts. You're going to see a lot more competition for jobs, and you're going to see a lot of whether it's Swiss players or imports who want to stay in Switzerland, that they're going to bring it every day, and ultimately the fans are going to win because the quality of the product is certainly going to go high.
But the fans, they're discussing and saying, hey, how can I myself identify and put money into that club when 10 Czechs are playing in my team?
Yes, and I'd have a tendency to think that any team that wants 10 Czechs or 10 Russians or 10 Canadians or 10 Swedes, whatever, you're probably not going to be that competitive anyway. You still need that balance between having, because as we started off this emission, you talked about the business and the emotion. Well, you can see these buildings, they breathe on emotion. And these teams, if you don't bring emotion to your roster, you're just not going to be competitive game in and game out. So I just don't think you can see too many teams are going to go sideways and change their entire business model. You're still going to see teams built on the majority of Swiss talent.
And what do you think about the junior movement? Because a lot of people, like when I asked Jonas Hiller, for example, he was never in a junior movement in a national team in junior movement. He just had Arno, and Arno believed in him. Without Arno, he had no chance. And he's saying, hey, if you go up to 10 imports, there's going to be one Swiss goalie, he's a good one, in the National League, and the second one is going to be an import player because you lose one out of 10 licenses. So I would never have a chance. Okay, the Josis and the big ones, they're coming up anyway.
Yes.
Nico is coming up anyway, but the other ones who are taking a bit more time, they're falling through.
Goaltending's a real tough position. When you win, it's always the team was great. When you lose, it's always the goaltending and the coaching was quite crap. So I know what it's like to be a goalie, just be a coach. But unfortunately, I think for goaltenders, it's going to be extremely competitive to have teams who are going to have 2 goalies, and not everyone's going to have coaches like Arno who can take you from here and grow you to there, like Hiller and Berra had.
Let's talk about your new job or next job. We're excited to having you back.
Well, I just think the reason why you guys want me back in the game is because I give all the Swiss population their weekly English lesson. So, but no, I've been very. I've actually been very quiet, working on a few things. working towards hopefully my next opportunity. And I'm excited. I mean, I just want to be sure I find another opportunity that's the right fit. I just don't want to rush out and take the first opportunity, but I want to go to a good organization. I want to go to some smart people. I'm still at an age where I think that there's a lot to learn, and I think I have a lot to give. So I know wherever I go, where I put wherever I hang my hat next, it's going to be a move where I think is going to be hopefully a long term and one that's going to be good for both parties, myself and the club.
We were talking about Swiss League. Could you imagine going a step down, or must it be a top team in a top league?
For me, I'm keeping all options open, and I'm looking at all opportunities, and it ranges all the way from being in sports management to being behind the bench. But I love all aspects of the game. The only thing I probably haven't done recently is drive a bus, but all aspects of the game I enjoy doing, and I know how I'm built, and people who know me will know one thing: if I'm going in head first, and I'm going in the deep end, and I'm not going to step in and step half in or half out. If I'm going wherever I go, I'm going to go all in.
So a double mandate, so sports chef and coach.
No. Honestly, I'm open to everything that an organization has, and if I go to an organization that has a different idea or a very capable coach, then I love being a sports chef. I love that part. I love the management of that end of it, and I love overseeing the development of sports teams, and I love that aspect of the business. And as long as you have good people, then it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, for me, there's no. I don't need to be back in the war zone behind the bench necessarily. I just want to go to a good organization that have good people in good positions.
So if Mark Luthi calls you at the end of the season, hey, Chris, you can build a new era. We're gonna change couple of the fundamentals of the team. Would that be an option?
Well, certainly, if Mark Luthi calls me, I'm not. I would certainly pick up my phone. I mean, Mark Luthi, what Mark has accomplished in Bern with all the people he's put around him, I mean, it's a flagship organization. So I would say that you certainly can expect me to pick up my phone if Mark was to call.